Cannibal Holocaust is one of the most controversial films ever released, gaining an infamy among film buffs alongside Salò, The 120 Days of Sodom, Natural Born Killers, and Antichrist. It's a film that pioneered the found footage genre, setting the stage for the Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity to become cultural touchstones. It's a film that is hard to watch, challenging for audiences then and now, and is one of the most fascinating movies to dig into. So let's talk about it and the legacy it left. Before we get into the film, I want to give context for the world it came into. Cannibal Holocaust was part of the cannibal boom, an exploitation cinema subgenre popularized by Italian filmmakers. But this genre of film spawned from the Mondo film movement. These were effectively documentaries with often staged events in an attempt to depict the world for audiences. What was often common was filming fake scenes or rituals with non-Western tribal groups in order to capture violence or sexual content under the guise of documentary filmmaking. Mondo Cane was the foundation for this genre and included other films like Brutes and Savages, which depicts fake ceremonies, a fake crocodile attack, and other taboo imagery or actions you couldn't get away with in fictional filmmaking at the time. The films preyed on Western audience ignorance and thus exploited those depicted. Today, it's harder to get away with faking or staging information in documentaries like that. The closest you get today are garbage political propaganda, like the work of Dinesh D'Souza, or conspiratorial anti-science nonsense, like 2014's The Principle. Mondo is one of many dead genres, but it did open the door for the cannibal boom with films like The Mountain of the Cannibal God, or The Last Cannibal World, the latter of which was also directed by the filmmaker who'd go on to make Cannibal Holocaust. So, full disclaimer, Cannibal Holocaust is an incredibly difficult film to watch. Aside from its filmmaking being very in-your-face, it depicts intense violence, sexual assault, and real animal deaths. That last part is probably the hardest pill to swallow in the film, as all the animal deaths are real and incredibly disturbing to watch. While the director was arrested when people believed the actors featured were actually murdered, all the human violence was staged. A holdover from Mondo films, animal deaths were something that Italian filmmakers at the time were mostly numb to. Even American audiences grew angry at films like Heaven's Gate, a film that released the same year, and reports of animal deaths and cruelty from that film made it additionally unpopular. The bottom line is that even trying to appreciate the film as an artistic statement is difficult due to the content. The plot follows an anthropologist searching for a missing film crew in the Amazon, where upon finding the remains and footage with a cannibal tribe, discovers the truth. These filmmakers were morally bankrupt, filmed fake scenes, and terrorized the natives for the sake of supposedly real stories. The film ends with the footage being destroyed, and the final line being, "I wonder who the real cannibals are." The film is a pure commentary on journalism, cultural imperialism, and even the Mondo genre itself. Director Ruggero Deodato was initially inspired by news coverage of the Red Brigades in Italy at the time. He felt the footage captured sensationalized the violence as opposed to presenting the truth. This is a similar claim surrounding news coverage of the Vietnam War in America the decade prior. Cannibal Holocaust depicts its documentary film crew as morally unjust, in not only staging events during their Amazon venture, but having done it in prior escapades, something a TV network is fully aware of. In the film, the television network wants to broadcast the footage of the dead crew, knowing how terrible these people are, and how the crew faked acts like forcing a tribe into a burning hut to stage a massacre. Granted, that scene was filmed with actual natives in an actual burning hut, which can be seen as bad taste. The tonal dissonance in the film comes down to how real it feels, and in many cases genuinely is, in a motivated effort to show how manufactured media was at the time. The real-life animal murders, for example, are a reflection of the Mondo genre where real animals were killed as fake rituals, and to act as a violent sensation for audiences. Deodato is clearly trying to show how disgusting it is to murder animals as a fake version of the truth, but what does that say about him doing the same thing as a criticism? What eventually disgusted the TV network executives enough to stop them from airing the footage and even destroying it is the last final segment of the film. The crew gang rape a woman and upon finding her executed body, lie about her death. The tribe attacks them for the girl's rape, with the leader intentionally wounding and leaving a member behind so his death can be filmed. The female member of the group is then captured and gang raped by the tribe, with the remaining crew simply recording it before they're killed themselves. It's a very confronting series of events designed to show how the media will falsify events and consume other people for the purposes of entertainment. Sensationalist media has always existed, from the fake stories about Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast, to paid articles bashing a political rival, or conspiratorial fake science seeing publication. Even journalist media, with all the promotions of integrity, can fall to the same desire of entertaining audiences and exploiting subjects. What Cannibal Holocaust is saying through all its disturbing content is how fake media can be while pretending to be true, how they will exploit cultures for attention-grabbing headlines, and that pretending to be true is morally bankrupt. After all, the line at the end implies that the seemingly savage tribes aren't cannibals, but the capitalist systems that consume people for profit really are. It's honestly one of the more profound messages in a horror film, but one that can be lost in the somewhat hypocritical execution and bad taste it leaves in your mouth. Like I said, the film was incredibly controversial. It remains banned in some countries, heavily edited in many others, and director Ruggero Deodato was arrested on charges of obscenity until he was accused of having murdered his cast. This was obviously disproven upon showing the cast alive and how he achieved certain effects. But even today, the film retains an infamy where you either like it or hate it. After Cannibal Holocaust became so infamous, cannibal films were high in demand for their marketability and controversy. One of the earliest follow-ups was Cannibal Ferox, a film that effectively served as a Cannibal Holocaust ripoff. It was directed by Umberto Lenzi, a man whose track record includes other Italian exploitation films, like Man from Deep River, the 1980 Eaten Alive film, the slasher Nightmare Beach, and most curiously, Ghost House, aka La Casa 3, which is Evil Dead 3 in English. Cannibal Ferox serves as a more direct commentary on colonialism, destroying foreign cultures. It follows the story of Americans coming to Colombia, with one of them having ulterior motives to steal riches from the native tribe's lands. Considering we live in a world where the British royal family still owns stolen African gems, or how much damage corporations do to countries they strip mine, this isn't a hard concept. The violence erupts due to the colonizer of the group murdering people while high on cocaine and causing the tribe to lash out. One thing that makes these cannibal films more tolerable is that the violence of the tribes is always in response to foreigners' violent transgressions against the native. It's never unprovoked, even if the innocent members suffer. One neat aspect of the films is the natives lying to other foreigners about their victims, effectively turning the tables on the culture who lie for profit. Two scenes I remember most from this film is a tied-up mammal being essentially fed alive to an anaconda, and one of the female characters tortured via hooks into her breasts. The film has a reputation for its extreme violence, and the film does earn it. It is less well put together than Cannibal Holocaust, and while Italian films of the era never had great English acting, Cannibal Ferox is a pretty egregious example of bad English acting. However, cannibal films were quickly losing their popularity as slashers began to be cheap and effective ways of showcasing violence. Halloween, Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and more became more viable methods of horror cinema that exploited sensibilities but could have things to say. The final cannibal boom film was 1988's Against Nature, aka Green Inferno, aka Cannibal Holocaust 2. The film was directed by Antonio Clemati, who served as a cinematographer on films like the original Mondo Cane and the previously mentioned Nightmare Beach. The film pretty much just follows in the footsteps of all the other films in the genre, but I feel its weakness is having too much going on with the characters, motivations, and story turns. It's by no means a bad film, but is pretty underwhelming, even in terms of violence. Considering what came before it, Against Nature just didn't have anything new or shocking to bring to the table, and the genre effectively died there. In 1991, the face of cannibals in media was no longer the tribes of the Amazon. It instead became that of Hannibal Lecter, thanks to The Silence of the Lambs. While there was 1986's Manhunter, that film was a critical and financial disappointment, but is regarded as a masterful film today. Anthony Hopkins' magnetic performance captured the imagination of audiences. This charming and sophisticated movie monster was someone people loved and feared in equal measure. Even today, the idea of a cannibal in cinema is owned by Lecter. Ridley Scott's admirable sequel in 2001 continued his reign of terror. The 2002 prequel Red Dragon is a solid film considering Manhunter did the story so much better. The pre-prequel Hannibal Rising was truly bad, and the short-lived but dearly beloved Hannibal series still retains fans to this day. But there were still a few attempts to revive the cannibal mondo spirit. In 2007, there was the release of the truly awful and unwatched Diary of a Cannibal, but also Welcome to the Jungle. This film was directed by Jonathan Hensley, who wrote Die Hard 3 and directed the 2004 Punisher film, as well as being produced by his wife, Gail Ann Hurd, who had previously brought to life The Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, The Relic, and Armageddon. The film is a found footage story based on the theory behind the disappearance and presumed murder of Michael Rockefeller. While it is an effective recreation of Cannibal Holocaust aesthetic and can be pretty violent, the film just lacks the thematic punch or even hard-hitting narrative. While the ending has a strong note, too much of the film has us stuck with rather generic characters. While there is more basis on the real setting of Papua New Guinea, a place where headhunting tribes were documented, it just doesn't have the same sense of terror as the films it's pulling from. But there was one last attempt to recapture this lost genre, thanks to the modern master of exploitation horror, Eli Roth. I'll be honest, Eli Roth took me a while to get accustomed to. I had to familiarize myself with a genre that he still clings to, and revisit his work before I could truly appreciate them. Cabin Fever, his two Hostel films, The Man with the Iron Fists, and Knock Knock all stand as great modern incarnations of the dead exploitation genre. And so it's no surprise that he'd attempt to make his version of a cannibal exploitation film with the fittingly named The Green Inferno. Shown in festivals in 2013, the film didn't receive a wide release until 2015, and it's easy to see why. While the film isn't found footage and doesn't contain animal murder, it is one of the more violent American-produced films I've seen in recent years. The story is about a team of young activists going to the Amazon to protest the environmental destruction caused by corporations. However, after a nearly fatal protest, the group's plane crashes into the jungle, and natives attack them, believing them to be those who are destroying their home. The natives kidnap the group, performing rituals and eating them as they try to escape. What I like about the film is how it uses the toxic labeling theory in the inverse. Whereas audiences may absorb the negative portrayal of other cultures on film and apply to the real people, these natives take the negative image of destructive violent colonials and apply them to people supposedly there to help. And there's actually a twist in the film, where the leader of the protesters admits that their protest was funded by a rival corporation to seem like the lesser of two evils. It goes back to Cannibal Holocaust, where the Western world is far crueler and more destructive than any violent tribe could be. We literally live in a society where we consume products, and the makers of those products are free to consume us. The ending sees only one girl escaping, seeing the tribe gunned down, and saying her friends were all killed in a plane crash and the tribe was kind instead of violent. It feeds into the themes of lies and morality that the cannibal genre has always explored. Cannibalism is deemed completely taboo in modern societies, thus why it is always made for provocative storytelling on the darkness in humanity and other cultures. There is a final punch from the film during the credits, where the survivor is called by the sister of the protesters' leader, who knows everything publicly said was a lie, because her brother is alive and living with the tribe. This is clearly designed to interrogate the lies told at the end of the film and set up a possible sequel beyond The Green Inferno. While I'd love to see the sequel made, there's currently been no word on it since 2013. Hopefully, we'll return to the horrors of cannibal exploitation. So that was a long dissection of the cannibal exploitation genre as a whole. A violent, politically charged subgenre that is rarely seen, but may have an important place in this dog-eat-dog world.